Hi there. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to the Bytemethod AI Agentic AI in 2026 Myths versus Reality webinar. Quick introductions. My name is Richard Mendis. I'm the Chief Marketing and Strategy Officer at Bytemethod AI. We are a subsidiary of a company called Dexian, which is one of the largest IT staffing and solutions companies in the United States. Our subsidiary, Bytemethod AI, focuses on helping customers apply agentic AI and related technology to helping them improve process efficiency, operational efficiency, and essentially any other kind of custom projects that they'd like to apply AI to. I have been working in the software technology space for many years, probably dating myself somewhat with some of these names. I have built and co-founded a variety of different software startups and worked in some of the acquiring companies like TIBCO, SAP, and Siebel Systems or Oracle. I speak on a variety of different AI topics, and I've also participated in the development of AI standards like ISO 42001. But enough about me. Today, we're going to cover topics related to agentic AI. There's a lot of different definitions out there and semantics and things like that. So we'll level set by starting to define what agentic AI is and how it's built, not in great depth, but at a high enough level that everyone sort of has a level set. We'll then dive into kind of the core of the webinar, which is agentic AI myths versus reality. A lot of these myths started in, towards the second half of this year and will perpetuate throughout the next year. So we want to help kind of dispel and ground some of you folks in terms of what we believe is the reality. We'll follow that up with a demonstration of agentic AI in a retail scenario. And then finally wrap up talking a little bit about what we see on the horizon. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to submit them via the Zoom webinar Q&A panel, and I'll try to address them if they're relevant to the portion of the presentation that I'm discussing. If not, we'll wait till the end. So thanks again for joining, and let's get started. Okay, so I'm sure many of you have seen in the news a lot of hype around AI, frankly, on both sides, right? So on the one hand, we're seeing articles and research studies from very reputable organizations like Stanford, MIT, and others that's basically saying that AI is so good that it's starting to replace humans in the workforce, right? You had Stanford saying that there's a disproportionate impact on entry-level workers, companies, McKinsey and others saying that consultants are at risk, and MIT saying that it can already replace a large percentage of the U.S. workforce. On the other hand, you have news articles from equally reputable organizations, in some case, even the same organizations that are publishing the items on the left, like MIT, saying that, well, actually, no, a lot of these generative AI projects are actually, failing. AI is not stealing jobs. And there was a very recent article based on research from Vizier, an HR tech and analytics company, saying that some organizations are actually rehiring some of the workers that they replaced with AI. So which is it? Is AI so good that it's replacing jobs, or horribly failing at many different projects and it's not really replacing them? Well, the answer, as with most cases, is somewhere in between, right? And so we're going to talk about that today. Um, so let's start by kind of level setting and describing what agentic AI is, right? Because I think different folks may have different interpretations or kind of expectations of it. So from our perspective, and many others, agentic AI is AI that focuses on the completion of some sort of goal or task, but it has some sort of agency or decision making as part of it. It's not just a static prompt that you enter and you get a result. There's actually a predetermined or methodological plan, actions, maybe even use of certain tools and possible evaluation and rerunning that process, right? So a user provides a request. The agent will determine and make a plan based on that request on how it will best execute. It will execute those actions. It might use one or more tools in the process of executing those actions. And then ultimately, it will evaluate those results. And if the results are okay, it will provide a response. So at a high level, I mean, there are subtleties and more details behind it, but at a high level, this is kind of how we and many others define agentic AI. In terms of how it's built, and this is certainly not an exhaustive list, but we'll start with, on the first hand, no code or low code tools. These solutions are good for accelerated development and deployment, easy deployment of agentic solutions, where perhaps you want to do a rapid prototype or build an app for, a small group of people. The next sort of group of tools is what we call agentic frameworks. This is where, these tools provide sort of more of a balance of flexibility and creation speed, but with more customization, right? So building upon, the kind of benefits of the no-code, low-code tools, but giving you more flexibility. And then finally, we have, of course, fully custom development. This provides maximum flexibility. You might need complex integration with existing enterprise systems, and you want complete control and scalability of those solutions. Okay. Now, this is not a rule of thumb, but generally speaking, from left to right, these solutions or these development options are good for on the left-hand side, doing prototyping or individual or small team apps. In the middle, as you start to scale and you need more complexity, for larger organization-wide applications or medium-scale consumer-facing applications, and then custom development for these very kind of high-volume, mission-critical applications where you need lots of flexibility in terms of both what the application can do and how it's deployed and scaled. Okay, so with that under our belt, let's kind of dive into the kind of core of the topic today, which are these myths that we're starting to see and we expect to see more of in the coming year. Number one, and this is related to the articles I was sharing with you earlier, is this notion that AI can fully replace humans, right? And it may well come to pass that in certain tasks, AI can replace humans, but the reality today, and certainly we work, speak with and work with, hundreds of customers a year, AI excels at certain repetitive, well-defined tasks, but in many cases, human judgment remains essential, right? And this is especially true when it comes to very domain-specific areas where you do need, real human judgment and domain expertise. Okay. Our recommendation from here is to understand kind of the automation boundaries and the human in the loop steps. Human in the loop is a term you'll hear me mention for at least the foreseeable future, and many of the projects we're seeing, we actually see that it's not necessarily whether you're trying about replacing a human with AI, but rather how they can work together in conjunction to achieve a lot more than what a human could do on their own and be more accurate than what AI could do if they were working without a human. right? And so ultimately, what you're trying to do here is automate the time-consuming tasks, allow the humans to provide judgment and input where required, and elevate humans to perform kind of the higher value work. Okay. There was a question that came in I just want to address this really quickly. Where does Microsoft Foundry, AWS Bedrock, and Crew AI fit into the various categorizations? So I want to go back for a moment and just address that really quickly. MS Foundry, I would say, probably falls into the middle tier there. And again, no hard and fast rules, just my perspective, right? MS Foundry probably falls into the agentic frameworks area. AWS Bedrock, that provides access to the models. If you're calling those from a custom solution, then that's probably a service that's supporting custom development on the right. Crew AI, I think I may have had it initially on either low code or agentic frameworks. I'd probably put it in one of those two categories. Okay, good questions and great tools. Okay, moving on to the second myth. AI agents are prepared to solve any task well. This is a bit of a subtle one, but I think there's a prevailing, some people have this kind of notion that, you can take an AI agent out of the box and have it perform any task well. And the challenge there is, as you guys know, these AI agents out of the box are trained on public information. So they don't have any domain, excuse me, they don't have any domain specific knowledge or knowledge about your specific organization and the data that's being generated within your enterprise, right? So they are not necessarily good at solving all tasks. They are good at solving generalized tasks. When you have a domain specific problem statement or very proprietary information, you do need to do customization, right? So you don't have to start with that premise, though. You can certainly start with taking an off-the-shelf agent and seeing if it solves your specific use case well. And if it does, even without any fine-tuning or having to build any custom models, that's fantastic. Otherwise, you will probably have to define some benchmarks, some accuracy levels that you're trying to achieve, see how the agents do, and then work and adjust your AI pipeline, possibly doing fine-tuning or other things or maybe even a mix of different models within that agentic process to achieve the outcome you want, right? And certainly engage subject matter experts if needed to complement your team to provide expertise and guidance around solving domain-specific problems. Okay. Myth number 3, if you're successful at technically implementing an AI solution and you hit the accuracy you want, then there's a belief that, okay, it's going to be well adopted when we roll this out. And unfortunately, that doesn't take into account the human dynamic, right? In some cases, you're going to be changing a business process that now requires the humans to be retrained. In some cases, you may be fighting the inevitable concern that humans are worried about their jobs going to be replaced and they view this as a threat. And so there's this human dynamic that you constantly have to be aware of. And if you, despite your best intentions and technical acumen to be able to build something, if it requires adoption by humans, you have to make sure you don't, ignore that human element, right? So as you start with these projects, make sure to involve those humans early on. Remember, we talked about human in the loop. You want to make sure you involve those humans early on in the design of some of these solutions so that they understand how it's intended to be used once it's deployed. They understand how they're intending to interact with the solution and get the most out of it. Maybe you can reduce some of the fear about their job going away if relevant, and them focusing on higher value tasks, right? But certainly involve key stakeholders. Ensure, if necessary, incentive alignments so that the people in the field are sort of aligned with your incentive to use these solutions, and constantly monitor these KPIs to make sure that that adoption is actually happening. Okay. Myth number 4, if it works in testing, it will work in production. And this is somewhat related to the previous one, but more of a technical thing. Just because it works in your test lab, right, or with some initial testing data that you're trying it on, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work fully in production, even with adoption, right? Production environments, the reality is those expose, all sorts of use cases you didn't expect. There could be unexpected hallucinations from some of the large language models that may be used. You may encounter boundary cases that, weren't planned for. And so, the reality is, again, not a big deal. Stress test value and learn from failures. I don't think this is unique to AI projects in particular, although hallucinations and some other non-deterministic aspects of agentic AI make it a little bit more interesting. But build in safeguards into the solution. And the ultimate safeguard ultimately is a human in the loop fallback. So making sure that, within that agentic flow, where human judgment needs to be inserted, that you've done that correctly. And sort of if it runs into a problem, it can fall back and ask the human for help. These are really, really important aspects to kind of build into the solution. Okay. And then finally, myth number 5, once AI agents are in production, let's say you've overcome all the previous challenges we've talked about, you think you're done, and the reality is you're not, right? Production environments are, provide, kind of real world data changes constantly and AI technology is changing constantly. The one constant here is change. And so it's important that you monitor performance and accuracy. There's something called model drift, where based on the actual data in the production environment, the models no longer start to perform as accurately. And so you need to be able to constantly be monitoring and evaluating how these agents are performing. You want to be able to design and architect the solution to be able to swap models in and out and test different models, right? Every week, it feels like there's a new version of, whether it's something from OpenAI or Anthropic or even some of these open weight models from overseas are constantly being, released. And so it behooves you to ensure that the solution can be adapted to leverage, these new models as they come out for improved accuracy, improved speed, and lower cost. Right. And so being able to monitor not only how your solution is performing over time, but also evaluating additional technology to be able to sort of, enhance your current solution is something that we foresee happening significantly over the next 12, 24 months or longer. Okay. So there's a question that came in. If you don't mind, I'm going to hold that till the end because I want to move on to talk about this retail e-commerce scenario, which maybe will answer your question. So we'll go through this and then we'll circle back. So the scenario I'm going to show you guys today is imagine a sort of small to mid-size fashion retailer, right? A clothing brand, and they're launching a fall line of clothing, including some main items and some accessories, and they want to create digital assets that show models of different demographics wearing these clothes and accessories. Okay, maybe we don't want to use, AI generated models, so we want to use actual humans. So there'll be reference images provided of the clothes, the accessories, and the models. But we want to be able to dynamically generate, for example, a combination of a given main item, an accessory, and one of the models, because ultimately what this company wants to present on the website is a personalized, if possible, if they have the data, a personalized model wearing these particular clothing items so that it sort of matches the demographic of the person who's viewing the site. And in addition to that, we want to generate the model wearing these clothes and accessories in a scenario that matches the brand, right? So if you're, let's say, Nike, it might be a sporting, kind of athletic scenario. If you're Banana Republic, it might be, something in an office or other formal setting. Ultimately, once those scenarios and combinations are created, we want to generate those images for the e-commerce site. And then if somebody leaves, it browses and has stuff in their cart and then abandons it, we want to generate some videos based on similar context for ad retargeting. Okay. If you were to try and do this by hand or taking pictures or hiring a studio or something like that, even this simple scenario of, four items of clothing, four accessories, and four demographics would be 128 images, another 128 videos. It just gets unmanageable very quickly, right? If you have 10 items and eight accessories, you're talking about potentially many hundreds or thousands of images and videos, and it's not realistic. So the only real way to do this scalably for smaller or mid-sized fashion brands that don't have a big budget is to leverage generative AI. So with that, I'm going to pop into this demo and show you guys. This is a video because for time purposes, I need to accelerate the generation of items. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play here. And you can see here in this video, in this demo that we've built, you can change the brand, and not only is it sort of changing the look and feel, but it will ultimately change the context as well of the scenes in which these clothes are generated, right? So we'll hop back here to kind of the main brand, and I'm going to go ahead and upload our pictures of our model, a primary item of clothing, and an accessory. So here we're going to pick Brian, who's the developer who built this. Great guy. We're going to pick a hoodie, and I think he's going to pick some shoes here. Okay, so we're passing these. Now, I'm showing this to you manually. Of course, in an automated scenario, the agent would connect to the digital asset management system, pull these assets, and kind of go through them. For demo purposes, I'm sort of showing you this with full human in the loop interaction. So here it's analyzing these images and taking the context of the brand. It might take additional information as input like brand guidelines and things like that. And it's passing this information to an agent that's leveraging AI to analyze this information, because we're going to dynamically have the agent generate a prompt based on this information. So you can see here, it's analyzed the results and it's of each product. And now it's come up with different context variations. So coffee shop, outdoor casual, and home comfort. And we're going to kick off. In this case, we're using Nano Banana. I think this whole demo actually uses Google technology because it was a Google technology showcase. So here you can see it's now generating images based on those three input items with this context and the brand around a coffee shop, outdoor casual, and home comfort. And I can fast forward this a little bit, and you can see here some of the images that are being generated. Pretty interesting. Nano Banana, the new model is pretty powerful. And then based on these, now I can take these images and we can utilize these in the e-commerce site, but we're also asking the agent to go ahead and generate additional videos. And so I've actually got, I think, an output video here. Let me pause this and just show you. I wanted to show you the fidelity of this. It's pretty impressive. So here's a sample output from Google VO. And you can see here, it even has music and a pretty high resolution version of Brian, our model, with this coat. In this case, I had slightly different images, but with this coat and pants walking through an urban environment, right? So pretty high res. This can, of course, then be taken by an agent and further chunked into different formats and sizes and things like that for ad retargeting on different social media platforms, YouTube, Instagram, etc. Okay, so pretty cool demo. I'll kind of fast forward so you can see this actually ended up generating everything, and now you have all these assets. So if we take a look at kind of behind the scenes, what's happening here, this particular demonstration was built. The front end was built as a simple React web application, but all of the agents were built in Python and orchestrated with Google's agent dev kit using Google models. So we had to build several agents here. The first is kind of this main orchestrator agent. It orchestrated, between getting the input photos and generating the prompts to analyze it using Gemini 3. Every agent also uses what's called our prompt enhancer agent, because these are dynamically generated. We don't know what the input images are going to be or what the brand scenarios are. And so we have a prompt enhancer agent that dynamically generates the prompts through Gemini 3 Pro to then generate the images and ultimately generate the videos. Okay. Now, what's cool about this is not only can it provide scale to generate these assets quickly, but we can run multiple of these agents in parallel. So if you do have 1,500, 2,000 assets you need to generate, you don't have to sequentially generate it. This solution can spin up multiple agents as long as you're comfortable spending the tokens and generate many of these assets in parallel, saving you significant time and expense over, hiring, professional photographers and shooters, especially if you're a smaller organization and you just don't have that level of budget. Okay. Um, if you have any questions about this scenario, please, feel free to drop it in the chat and we'll try and answer them. But that kind of explains the demo and architecture behind the scenes. All right. So what do we see as coming up next for Agentic AI in 2026? Number one, in interoperable agents via these standards known as a model context protocol and agent to agent. If you haven't heard of these, you can Google look them up. These are new standards or emerging standards, I should say. They've been around for a little while now. Model context protocol is a protocol that enables agents to communicate with existing, systems or other applications, and that model context protocol acts as like a bridge on top of APIs or other integration mechanisms and provides context to the agent so that it can more easily interact with other software solutions and assets. Agent to agent is a way for agents to speak to each other. This is a consortium of various different software vendors and providers who are building the standard. Ultimately, this enables better collaboration between agents and across platforms. For example, having Salesforce or ServiceNow speak with SAP and vice versa. Okay, so we're going to see a lot more adoption of those standards in 2026. I think related to that, we're going to start seeing agents coordinating across departments. So for example, in that previous demo I showed you where we talked about agents primarily generating assets, that agent might talk to something in a product catalog or finance and get pricing information to be able to populate the e-commerce site, not just with these digital image assets, but also pricing, right? Or inventory or what have you. So we're going to start to see lots of different agents coordinating across departments. I think governance, compliance, and audit is going to become a big deal, right? As more of these, companies do these experiments and release these agents into the enterprise, they'll start to realize, whoa, we need some good old-fashioned governance and compliance and auditing of these solutions. And so we're going to start to see more software vendors and toolkits released that help, with observability, governance, auditing, evaluations, things like that. I think we're going to start to see this notion of higher order agents or meta agents that are more strategic, that do the high level planning and coordination, maybe even working with, executives in different groups, coordinating across other multiple agents and almost acting as sort of like, essentially management or orchestrators across multiple existing agents, right? Monetization experiments. This is interesting. People are sometimes running into challenges with the economics of this, and we see software vendors experimenting with different, pricing models. I think we're going to start to see these pricing and monetization experiments continue. I don't think there hasn't been sort of a standard that's well defined. I do think we'll start to see pricing settle by the end of next year, at least in terms of the underlying kind of models and how token models work and things like that. There's lots of race to commoditization and race to the bottom right now. But as some of these higher value models are released or other layers in the stack, I think we'll start to see some of this pricing settle. We have seen lots of different types of AI projects, from heavily custom work to using off-the-shelf systems and everything in between. I think for real big ROI within large enterprises, we'll still see kind of custom AI projects taking the lead for no other reason than those complex domain-specific areas are where enterprises can kind of generate the most value today, right? These are areas where they hire a lot of people. These are highly specialized, highly compensated people doing very specific things, and focusing on AI projects to help improve the efficiency of those areas is what we believe will generate the most ROI in the coming months, as long as the scope is focused and the teams are strong and understand kind of how to apply AI properly in these areas. Okay. So that's kind of the wrap up. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're just coming up on the 30-minute mark. There was a question that came in about a few examples of agents, like presumably 3P agents, which are kind of, e-commerce or perceive, plan, perform kind of models. I think the demo we showed you is maybe an example of that, right? Where it's sort of taking in these inputs and about, the clothing and the model and the brand, and trying to perceive and identify what the context is of that brand and the items that it needs to use, and then generating assets that take those, that perception into account to generate that information. So that's one example. There are probably many others. Another question that comes up often that I see is, can you, what platform do you recommend to build agents, right? And I'll go back to that initial slide I had on this topic early on. There really is no platform that, from a Bytemethod perspective, we're agnostic. We ask customers to sort of tell us what their constraints are. And so we've used everything from tools like, Crew AI to LangChain to, custom tool calling with Python and things like that. We do see common, how do I call them? Supporting data infrastructure. Tools like Snowflake, Databricks, et cetera, those often come up, and people, customers ask us to leverage some of those capabilities, and some of the native AI capabilities within those platforms. So those have certainly come up quite a bit. But in terms of tooling for agentic frameworks, we've really seen quite a lot of different tools. I wouldn't say that there's any one. Microsoft is, of course, always on the top of people's minds. They've made some changes recently. I think a gentleman, Andy, asked about Foundry, or somebody else asked about Foundry. What we've seen with Microsoft is there's lots of experimentation and beta software. Not everything is production ready, but we expect, that to evolve rapidly in the coming years. So we do see Microsoft playing an important role in this ecosystem. Another question, are there any best practices or tools you recommend for governance and audit? There are some governance tools. I don't want to name them off the top of my head, so I will look up your email and try and send them to you. Very focused on data governance, right? And so it's things like, putting in visibility layers on top of your data, ensuring you can have traceability for where you get those elements and what systems they map to. So lots of kind of data governance. And then what was the other one? For audit. For audit, we haven't seen very specific. I haven't personally seen, specific tools. There's lots of evaluation tools, and observability solutions. There's a company I ran into the other day, a startup named Holokai AI. They're just about to launch. And I think we'll see tools like that where they act sort of as a middleware between the models. And so you make all your model calling through this middleware layer, and it routes to different models and allows you to test different models and evaluate the results. And so I think we'll start to see more of that. And ostensibly what they say is they can do price optimization, right? So they can route it to models depending on, the accuracy and optimize for price. And over time, in theory, if they get enough customers using it, they can potentially do volume-based pricing. So I think we'll start to see more of that. Although things are changing so rapidly, it's hard to see, to say where things will go. But yeah, I think that layer. I think we I mentioned it again briefly in terms of the where we go from here. I think this governance, compliance, and audit layers. I really do think we'll see lots of investment from a tech perspective in that. Let's see. I think we have time for one more question. Let's see here. Get my Q&A back up again. What are ways to prevent hallucinations and ensure agents defer or escalate correctly? Oh, that's a great question from a friend I know who's watching this. Thanks, Darian. So the question about hallucinations. So the reality is these agents are leveraging large language models in most cases, and large language models will be non-deterministic, meaning every time you put in the same question, you might get a slightly different answer. So there's no way to, 100% eliminate this, right? Especially in complex agents, you will have some of this, but building the right guardrails in throughout the solution is what's key, right? So, for example, when you're dynamically generating prompts, ensuring that those prompts have are written carefully to ensure, that you're, reducing hallucinations or minimizing extraneous data where, data tends to not be available. AI has a tendency to, or language models have a tendency to make things up even when there's not enough data. And so you want to make sure that when there is insufficient information to make a, judgment or provide information, that you're not making things up. Um, Deferring or escalating quickly, you need to set thresholds when the agent is unable to have, let's say, whatever the threshold is, 85, 90% confidence, that in those cases, especially if the impact of getting it wrong is high, that you defer back to the human in the loop, right? So depending on what the agent's doing, and the impact to the organization, you need to determine what threshold is sufficient for the AI to make an autonomous decision. And if it's a sensitive area and it doesn't meet a high threshold, you need to fall back to the human in the loop, right? That is my recommendation on how to handle hallucinations. Although that probably deserves its own. We could spend a half hour, an hour just on that topic alone. Maybe that's a topic for another webinar. Okay. All right. So thank you very much to everyone who joined. Really appreciate your time. For those of you who are watching on recording, thank you for making the time. If you have any questions about AI in general or custom AI projects, or you want some help with talking to your team about determining feasibility of AI projects, please reach out via Bytemethod.ai, and we're always happy to help and answer questions. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful week.